or attacks, 21 days. Now, right now, across the country, the same conversation is happening in living rooms and in coffee shops, but it's happening in whispers. You're looking at the headlines, then you look over your shoulder, and you're asking yourself the questions you're not supposed to ask out loud. Is this a coincidence or a coordinated strike? Is my skepticism a survival instinct or a character flaw? Is the foundation of our Western Judaic-Christian democracy actually under siege? But we're nice, right? We've been conditioned to swallow the questions before they hit the air. We're terrified of the label, racist. So let's stop whispering. Let's start leading. Let's tackle the big question that's haunting the American psyche right now. Are you becoming Islamophobic? Better yet, is the country becoming Islamophobic? Well, today we're not going to deal with feelings. We're going to deal with reality. We're going to do two things. First, let's define the terms. You can't win a fight if you don't know what the words mean. We're going to strip away the political baggage and define Islamophobia with surgical precision. Second, I want us to look at the data. Now, we're going to move past the one-offs and look at the patterns. We're going to look for these consistent patterns, see if it's a trend. So does the objective data show a contrast between this and other faiths? Or is the fear going to be unfounded? We're going to find out if your instinct is backed up by rational objectivity. So it's time to stop being nice and start being honest. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to hit like, hit the subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments. This is the stuff you've missed. Let's do this.
Strap yourself in because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
The war on words. Now, before we look at the data, we have to look at language. You know, in the world of leadership and geopolitics, if you control the definition, you actually control the person. So in 2021, Islamic interest groups lobbied the United States to codify a definition of Islamophobia. Now, this isn't just academic. It's about setting the rules for what you're allowed to think and to say. And the original definition that they pushed for was this: an irrational fear, prejudice, or hatred of Muslims. And I want you to hold that word in your mind, irrational, because it's very important when we define the terms here. Now, the shift in logic is something curious when you take out the word irrational, because this is why the Islamic State went back to the drawing board. Now, they lobbied the UN. They wanted to strike that one specific word, irrational. So they updated the current definition. And I want you to see how it now reads. From the time of 2021 to 2022, they changed this definition. And it now reads this, and you can see it right on the UN website as well. Islamophobia is a fear, a prejudice, and a hatred of Muslims. You may look at that and you go, well, it's really close. You took out the one word irrational. Now, why the edit? And this is really important, because the word irrational is a high bar. Now, if the definition requires your fear to be irrational, then you have a defense. Now, you could point to the 4 attacks on our U.S. soil the last month, and you'd say this: my concern isn't a phobia, it's a rational response to a reoccurring pattern. So if you remove the term irrational, the UN has attempted to turn a religion into a protected racial class. Now, under this new logic, it doesn't matter if your fear is backed by evidence or not. It doesn't matter if there's a trend, a pattern, or a systemic threat. If you feel it, or if you critique at all Islam, you aren't being rational, you're being a racist. So, how convenient is that? Just remove the term irrational, and now there is no rational basis for anything. It's a specialized trap designed to silence dissent. In any other field, business, security, medicine, if you operated this way, you'd be considered insanely crazy, a nut job. If a pilot ignores a warning light because he or she is told his fear is prejudice, what happens? The plane crashes. I have a different suggestion. We need to reject this blanket definition. We need to reclaim the right to be objective. If you have a baseless, unfounded hatred for a person simply because of their faith, then yes, that is irrational, and that's a phobia. But when the data and the lived experience in America and Britain and France and the entire Western world shows an overwhelming pattern, that's not a phobia. That is rational. It's a healthy fear of a system that is working to supplant Western Judaic Christian values. If you think I'm being hyperbolic, if you think I'm just venting, then you aren't paying attention to the numbers. You don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at the data. Okay, we're now on the website Open Doors USA. They are a Christian-based organization that tracks the persecution of Christians worldwide in all different kinds of countries. They put out a world watch list every single year. And let's take a look at their top 10 countries on their world watch list. Now, I'm just going to read them off and then give you some information on them. Number 1, North Korea. No surprise there. Number 2, Somalia, Yemen, Sudan, Eritrea, Syria, Nigeria, Pakistan, Libya, and Iran. Now, here's what I want you to notice on this list. Out of this top 10 countries that are persecuting Christians worldwide, 9 out of the 10 are Islamic. All of them are Islamic except for North Korea, that are raping, they're beheading, and they are persecuting Christians worldwide. Are you surprised? No surprise, because the data worldwide shows us that terrorism comes 9 out of 10 times from Islamic countries. Now, this is important. I now want to take us to another piece of data where Nick Freetas, who highly recommend, great Christian man, former Green Beret, YouTube influencer on Western values. If you haven't seen his channel, Nick, big shout out to you. Thank you for the job that you're doing to help our country and to establish Christian values here in America. I want to play a portion of one of his most recent videos that he's identifying the same trend on religious terrorism based upon religion. Let's take a look at this.
To be predominantly coming from one sort of, we'll just say, ideological worldview. And I'd like to know where you get off. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Yeah, there we go. Well, there is no single public source provides an exact pie chart for all major religions. Here's a simplified text-based bar graph approximating the share of religiously motivated terrorist attacks post-2000. Okay, well, here we go. We got other religions, less than 1%, Buddhism, less than 1%, Judaism, less than 1%, Hinduism, less than 1%, Christianity, 1 to 2%. But then when you dig into the numbers a little bit differently, what you find is that you usually got some sort of weird, there's been like a couple that chalk it up to anti-abortion. And then others where it's like some sort of weird Christian cult that is openly heretical. And then 90 to 98% Islamists and Islamic motivated. And this is the part where we get into the discussion of, well, Nick, okay, yeah, we get it. We get it. But are you saying that all Muslims are terrorists? No, I've never said that. What I will say, though, is that when we look at terrorist acts, religiously motivated terrorist acts, here's what we tend to find. They are, judging by the numbers, overwhelmingly Islamic.
When you look at this data, we're not talking about hurt feelings here. We're talking about systemic raping and beheading and genocide. Now, try to find the inverse of this. Find me one Christian nation where the government is systematically working to wipe Islam off the face of the earth. You can't, because the data doesn't exist. The events don't happen. So attacks in the name of any other faith are statistically dwarfed. They're almost nondescript. There's a common denominator, though. From the Pulse nightclub to the Bataclan in France to the streets of Virginia last week, the variable isn't just religion in general. It is a specific fundamentalist Islam that is taking the offensive and the attack worldwide. So here's the bottom line. If a CEO saw one department failing this consistently, they wouldn't call a meeting to discuss feelings. They would call it a systemic failure. So when the UN scrubs the word irrational from the definition of Islamophobia, they are demanding that you ignore the math, the data. They want you to believe that noticing a 90% disparity of global violence is a phobia rather than a rational observation. If you attack an innocent person because of their faith, regardless of they're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, then you have lost the moral high ground, period. But if you look at the blood, the frequency, the stated goals of the Islamic movement, the data, and you feel a need to protect Western values, that is not a phobia, my friends. That is a pulse, and it's rational. So stop apologizing for being rational and start demanding the truth. Well, if you learned something today or this video has helped you in any way, I would be honored if you would hit subscribe, like, share, or provide a comment. Until next time, my friends, faith and honor.